noticing and maybe challenging some of those things with our children and how we go about it, I suppose is my question.
I guess if you funnel it down to there's only so many hours in a day.
Yes.
And part of that is sleep. Obviously, when your child is asleep, you don't have to monitor what they're doing.
You think?
Wow.
It's just that, I work in a school and they tell me, mum and dad think I'm asleep, but actually not, I'm gaming.
Oh, right.
That's what I
mean. Me and I went somewhere.
I know where
you
went.
Yeah, I've gone off the trail of thought now. But in the time that you do have that your children are awake, it depends if they're putting a lot of their time into one particular thing, that's predominantly what you're going to get out. So if they're spending a lot of their time with mum and dad, for example, and it's healthy conversations, just general conversations about this, that, and the other, then that's the sort of thing that's going to come back out. But if they're spending a lot of time on social media, for example, then they're going to start criticizing themselves, comparing themselves to other people. They're going to start having distorted views about themselves, dependent upon what they're watching, obviously. But, if they're watching nothing but fitness people wanting to lose weight or, become a different body shape, then that's what's going to come out. What goes in comes out, doesn't it? And that's something that we all know. So, if I watch too much TV, well, a good example is the news. I can't watch the news at all because it just makes me really sad and depressed. Like I'm just too sensitive for it. So I don't put that external thing into myself to then be thinking about it, and then it comes out in different ways. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and a part of it, when I'm asking these things, and you made a good point about having so much time in a day, there's a kind of, for parents, there's a pressure that you're on top of all of these things. And actually, sometimes it seems to me is sometimes our kids have to work these things out for themselves with support of parents. But we can, as parents, could we be too paranoid about all of these things and too sensitive to it? And actually, sometimes we need to give our kids some freedom to explore these and to come to us, and if they've got questions, actually that independently work out what they like, they don't like, what's good for them, what's not good for them. I don't know, that's a question maybe for you, Jenny. Have you got any views on that at all?
Yeah, I guess so. I think you're right. I think we have so many different facets to this. We have the parents who have the time to kind of be around and observing their children. And at the other end of the scale, we've got the parents who are working their socks off, trying to make ends meet and juggle a career and a family and all that entails. And there's much less time to be that observer. I think you're right about this. Inevitably, they are going to see stuff. And maybe the time over which we've got 24 hours in a day, we're asleep for that long, we're at school for so long. But actually, it only takes a few seconds on TikTok, for example, to be flooded with those idealized, perfectionized images. So, and realistically, as a parent, we probably can't prevent that happening. I mean, we can't police. The only way you're going to do is live on an island and throw away all phones, really. So I think it's going to happen. So it's more a case of how we're going to navigate this as parents of teenagers. And I guess in an ideal world, that would be enticing them away from the constant screen time. And that's going to be very difficult because they don't necessarily want to hang out with their parents. Going back to the sort of gym, well, what else can we offer that would be interesting to them? But also, before we started talking, and I was thinking about how I would deal with it if my daughter was a young teenager now, being subject to this, which she wasn't. She's 35 now. And I think I'd want to have this big flag up saying, it's not real. And I know we all know it. It's not real and it's not healthy. but I can't stop this happening. I can't stop you seeing it, but all I can implore you is to constantly be aware of the fact that your mind is likely to get caught up with believing that it's real because it's so well done.
I could picture that as being framed. I could picture that quote by Jenny Penkel about social media. It's not real. Sorry.
Go on. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No,
here's an idea.
It's not real, but we can't stop it from happening. I love it.
Yeah. What I was going to propose, this is a funny idea. It's just occurred to me that wouldn't it be fun as parents if we actually did a bit of photoshopping on ourselves and had a really fab picture of ourselves put up on the wall with the whole, really heavily filtered with "it's not real," because in 10 seconds we can turn ourselves into something that we're not.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to just have that kind of idea that.
Well, that might set us down a path of self-destruction.
I was thinking that. I was like, oh, I could do this.
Yeah, but I quite like that version of myself.
Big banner, "it's not real." and learning to accept the grittiness of being a human being with the spots and the wrinkles and the stuff that isn't okay.
It's very hard though to get a teenager to, as mature adults. Well, I say mature, but I'm not that mature. But as adults, we're more likely to be able to take on board "it's not real." But as a teenager, it's real to them, isn't it? It's so real. How do you get a teenager to realize that it's not real?
Yeah. I think they do know, but their subconscious mind doesn't.
That's very interesting. So how do we get the subconscious mind to, because I know that the subconscious mind is really good at working with reward or reason. So would you think that by offering them a reward or a reason for accepting that it's not real, does that make sense?
No, not to me. Just you, Jack.
I'm lost now.
So let's say you've got a teenager, and the teenager's watching a lot of social media, and you're saying to the teenager, it's not real, but I can't stop it from happening. But if you decide to come away from it, I'm going to reward you with X, Y, Z, or I'm going to offer you a really good reason why it's good not to get involved with social media so much. Because the subconscious brain, the monkey part of the brain, needs something to either be rewarded by or a reason. Otherwise, it's not going to stick. So, have you ever tried to diet? And the reason there's always a reason, isn't there? You either want to diet because you want to lose 10 pounds or you want to get into a size smaller dress. So that's the reason. And you might reward yourself with a holiday at the end of it. It might be like, oh, I can get into the swimming costume at the end of it. So your subconscious mind is more likely to stick to it because there's a reward or a reason. Does that make sense?
Yeah. My thought on that initially was, oh no. But I guess that would come back more to my thought about enticing them with other things. But I think as soon as you start to get into the game of I will reward you, or I'll reward you to come away from social media, I think it's going down a very complex path. What I was more talking about is trying to help them to see that although they know it's not real, images that they're being bombarded are not real. They're going to go, yeah, I know that. I know all about filters.
I don't think they do know that.
Oh,
though.
really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think they want to, I think they want to not know that. I think they want to live in this fantasy where it can be real, but a reward doesn't have to look, I know I keep going on about the reward, but it doesn't have to look like a reward from a, we could be quite savvy with this. So it's finding something that's more powerful than social media that to us is more rewarding for the child, but to the child, it's just more compelling. It's like a brighter, shinier toy, so to speak.
I agree, but they're still going to see it.
Yes,
because you're not gonna block it completely. So yes, you're gonna have less of it, but they're still going to be subjected to that.
Well, I think we need to sell your picture to every single household that has a teenager. Quotes.
She'll set it up for people, now. I'll have to make one in Canva or something.
Oh, yes. Like, honestly, this
I mean, what do you think about, I mean, I don't know in terms of, I'm kind of halfway between these points about what teenagers know and what they don't. I do think that quite a lot of teenagers recognise that social media is not good for them. And I think, and there has been some studies that have said that, and kids have been asked and they wish that it had never been invented, but there's an addictive quality, there's a kind of a dopamine hit that they're getting when they're scrolling through this stuff that is actually really hard to break away from, even if they want to break away from. Well, and as parents, I think there's a challenge there, isn't there? That, it's like the kids kind of know, they're not stupid, they know that it's probably not good for them, but all of their friends are doing it. They want to be included, they want to know what's going on. And they're looking for something, they're looking for some stimulation, they're looking for, is that, and that's the harder thing to break, I think, than...
Yeah. I don't necessarily think it's the social media. I think it's the awareness or lack of awareness that teenagers have. It's like when Jenny says teenagers probably know that it's not real, but have teenagers asked themselves the question, is it real or not? A lot of teenagers that are going on social media haven't even thought about whether it's real or not. They're just taking it in anyway. When we watch the telly, we don't watch a program and say, is this real or not? We just watch it and we're either sucked in or not, aren't we? We don't really care if it's real or not. We just, we want to watch it because it's stimulating. And I think that's the same with teenagers. I don't think they care whether it's real or not. They want something that's going to hit the spot.
Yeah, but the significance is around if it's real or not, is whether it actually impacts their self-image, their expectation of who they should be.
Yeah.
And who they need to be loved. And that brings me back to another important point, that at the bottom line here is that stability and love within a family home goes a long way to inoculate our children against these harmful external influences.
Yeah.
And because they're not just coming from social media, are they? I mean, it's social media seems to be the pariah of all of these things at the moment, but they are coming from lots of different places. And actually, that makes sense to me, Jenny, as a parent. It's just, instead of focusing on the individual issues, to create an environment that's safe, loving, and open and transparent, so that if they do have worries or issues, they feel comfortable about coming to their parents, and providing them with opportunities to do things outside of the digital world. So you're not going to capture everybody in that, are you? Because there will be some people some kids go
and
down
even with the best upbringing, you might have parents that say, oh, you can talk to us about anything. And still teenagers will still be like, no, I'm not talking. It's really good to have a sibling that you get on with. I think that would be a really a bigger and more positive, rewarding thing for the child, is to have a sibling that you could talk to that's just a little bit older.
Or cousins or other kids in your family. But, and it brings me back to this whole thing about parenting, which I'm quite passionate about. It's not just parenting has become very insular, and the responsibility for parenting lies on the parents, whereas perhaps children, this kind of whole phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, that kind of, other influences, other positive influences, whether it's aunts and uncles, cousins, or teachers, or doctors, or priests, or scout leaders, or whatever they are, all of these people that have an influence on your child's life, the responsibility feels to weigh very heavily on the shoulders of the parents, where there are other people that you can bring into your children's lives to help you with those.
And a lot of it is all cultural norms as well. You know, what's going on within the family environment, what are they picking up on, what is acceptable and not acceptable. So in some cultures, mental health just isn't spoken about whatsoever. Not even cultures, like in my, when I was a child, mental health was just didn't exist. So, you know, it's what's going on in the family and what is it that they believe in, because that's what the child's going to believe in, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think talking is huge. Talking in a measured, kind, loving way, huge.
You know what, I've always loved, you know, I think it's in America that they do it mainly, where every evening they'll have a meal and they'll just sit and talk about checking in with each other. Yeah, how's your day gone? What, you know, and I would have loved that as a child.
We don't eat with our kids every meal because, you know, families nowadays, people haven't come in from work or whatever, but we do try to do golden moments, whether it's at bedtime or, you know, when they've come home. What was your golden moment? What was the best thing that happened to you today? And that does spark a conversation usually about what they've been doing in the day, and it's a positive thing as well, because I'd hate, you know, what went wrong for you today, what was bad. You don't want to be talking about that, do you? You want to be talking, but sometimes the stuff that's worrying them then comes out as part of that.
It's similar to my friend. She has a son who's, I think, 12 now, and it's really hard to get anything out of him at all nowadays. But what she does is, as soon as they go to bed, and she says, you know, just before she says night to them, whilst they're laid in bed, she will ask them, like, how has your day gone? And he that's the time that he opens up and he talks about anything and everything, and sometimes it goes on too long. And she's like, oh, yeah, but she knows that if that's his moment, you know, finding a child's moment is crucial, isn't it? And it's really difficult. It can be difficult to find. Sometimes they don't have a moment where they want to open up, sometimes they just don't want to open up. But if you can get them at a moment where they're feeling relaxed, and just before bedtime seems to work for him, but he won't open up or talk hardly any other part. Like, he'll only talk about football, that'll be it. And because she doesn't know anything about football, it's hard, you know. It's like, oh, what are we going to talk about? But just before bed, bam.
I know a couple of people, and my husband including, because I've got two older stepsons, has found being in the car. So if he's taking them anywhere, you're not looking at each other, but sometimes conversation does flow a bit better if you're in the car and you've got that kind of moment